procurement of organs, the legalization of organ sales in the United States. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, every 10 minutes a name is added to the National Organ Transplant List. The list is comprised of over 100,000 people in need of a donation. Currently, the United States is going through a shortage of organs for transplantation. Donor-recipient ratios are becoming smaller and smaller as days pass. Patients may wait years to receive an organ. The 1984 National Organ Transplant Act created a registry for transplantation and illegalized the sale of human organs. Through examining these troubling ratios in 3 different lenses, along with offering future solutions to the situation, we present our team research question: why should the sale of human organs be legalized in the United States? Collectively, we determined that in order to increase the availability of functioning organs to provide reliable methods of transplantation, organ procurement should be legalized in the United States.
Through the ethical lens, I discovered that legalizing the sale of human organs is the most moral approach to eliminating the organ shortage crisis in the U.S. As a result of increased demand for organs and the prohibition of non-altruistic organ donations, altruistic meaning selfless donations, international organ black markets have become more prevalent. Coordinator of the European Platform on Ethical, Legal, and Psychosocial Aspects of Transplantation, Frederick Ambich-Stier, claims that because organ trade has been prohibited, organ black markets have immorally taken advantage of both donors and receivers by means of coercion. The 1984 Act deemed organ coercion unethical, primarily because it could lead to coercion. Yet coercion continues as a result, especially as transplant tourism rises. According to the World Health Organization, transplant tourism, a phenomenon in which Western patients travel abroad to purchase organs from less regulated countries, has been responsible for the sale of 10,000 organs in 2010. With this in mind, James Taylor, a professor of applied ethics at the College of New Jersey, states that if coercion is opposed, then legalizing an organ market should be supported. Additionally, it is unjustifiable for the law to allow people to risk their lives on the job, but prevent them from selling their organs to save someone else. Philosophy professor John Harris claims that there exists no fundamental difference between selling organs and other widely accepted risky labor. For example, firefighters are admired and compensated for their dangerous work, while organ sellers are criminalized. Both individuals risk their lives to save others. But there exists a difference in attitude that is inconsistent and cannot be justified, particularly when it disables others from sellers from saving lives. And with the organs belonging to the donor, it is the seller's right under the ethical principle of autonomy for them to sell it. With the current system of organ donations being ineffective and hypocritical, legalizing the sale of human organs is paramount. To offer a temporary solution to the lack of available organs, the futuristic lens can be examined.
By exploring future solutions to temporarily solve problems of organ transplantation, the sciences of regeneration and cloning can be examined. According to Charlotte Kafoury, a published author in the McGill Journal of Medicine, therapeutic cloning using cell replacement therapy has the potential to create various types of tissues. This creation could then further develop into the reparation of major organs. This would decrease instances of transplant tourism as well as eliminate the need for a black market. The patient's body would also be more inclined to accept its own organ rather than rejecting a foreign one. There would also exist potential barriers with regeneration. For instance, the ethical dilemma of the cloning of a human has been raised by several scholars. Although the cloning of organs would be different than cloning an entire human life, biomedical ethics could still be compromised. When regenerative and cloning technology catch up with the ideas of the future, the ethical ramifications will need to be considered.
Through the scientific lens, I researched the effects of the national waiting list on the health of Americans. Due to a lack of nationwide donors, 20 people die each day, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Organ trade could potentially open the doors to a significant reduction of that waiting list. Through my research, I concluded that legalizing a market would increase the availability of uncommon organs for matching. The longer a person is on the waiting list, the less likely they are to accept a transplant. However, organs are only available when a donor becomes a match on the waiting list. The process of matching requires the donor to be compatible in blood type and HLA antigens. As defined by Associate Professor Ilhai from the University of Alberta, HLAs are what enables the immune system to recognize self versus non-self antigens. And then donor and recipient are cross-matched to check for negative antigen responses. When organs are mismatched, either by mistake at the hospital or not enough HLA antigen matches, recipients experience biological rejection. Rejection is a response of the human body's immune system deciding to take action against the foreign organ that was transplanted. Professor Arlie Moreau and her team of researchers from the Center for Research in Transplantation and Immunology report that the biological response to foreign organs include inflammation, lesion formation, and death. Rejection happens in one of three stages: hyperacute, acute, and chronic rejection, from the quickest biological response after surgery to the slowest, respectively. 50% of recipients experience chronic rejection between 5 to 10 years after transplantation. In a market, living donors can be tested for the best match to avoid those negative antigen responses. However, there is a temporary solution to rejection.
To combat rejection, the immune system could be temporarily shut down through genetic engineering. This would give the body time to adapt to the new organ without being able to reject it. This solution is presented by Robert Lechler, professor of immunology at King's College of London. He claims that regulatory cells have been genetically engineered in the body of a mouse so that its immune system can be turned on and off. And with this success, professionals are ready to begin conducting clinical trials in humans. This solution would benefit patients who frequently ingest immunosuppressants, medicines used to prevent organ rejection. With the alteration of the immune system, fewer immunosuppressants would be required. However, this might not entirely suppress rejection if the organ was not properly matched in the first place. With the intake of medications, life-threatening illnesses and side effects such as bone thinning and skin cancers materialize. Although this method reduces the chances of rejection, it should not be a solution to stopping biological rejection altogether.
Through my lens, I analyzed how the legalization of the organ trade would economically benefit the United States and its citizens. Organs such as kidneys, parts of liver, and some ribs can be transplanted with the donor continuing to live a happy life. A cause of the shortage in the U.S. could be the lack of incentive for removing a part of someone's body and dealing with recovery. The legalization of the sale would boost their availability and allow people to keep control of their bodies and lives. To donate an organ requires a trip to the hospital, time off work, and dealing with recovery. Follow-ups to the doctor to ensure health, all of which requires financial stability. Endocrinologist Dr. Curtis Harris and medical attorney specializing in ethics Stephen Alcorn proposed a trust fund in the state of Pennsylvania that authorizes the state to pay up to $3,000 to the donor's funeral home or hospital for donor-associated expenses in Pennsylvania. If the people had the ability to collect the incentives for the cost of recovery or the surgery itself, it is only assumable that the availability of organs would skyrocket. Continuing further into the benefits of economic incentive in the U.S., citizens already struggle to make ends meet and are usually not prepared for financial emergencies. Legalizing the sale of human organs would allow for healthy people in need to be able to provide for their families, as well as be a safer and smarter alternative than taking out a loan or a form of credit. In these scenarios, both the provider and the recipient of the organ would benefit from the legalized organ trade and the ability to legally and safely buy and sell organs on an open market. This would be similar to the donation of egg and sperm cells, a flourishing industry that helps create jobs and helps create families. This idea, in the economical sense, would align perfectly with the organ trade. For both parties to walk away healthy and in control of their own bodies is physically and economically beneficial. To examine a solution to the organ shortage, here is the futuristic lens.
Looking again into the future, xenotransplantation, as defined by David Pettichuk, author of several medical books, is a transplantation of organs between different species. Through this method, functioning organs would be grown in animals with a genetic makeup like that of humans and would then be surgically transferred. Pettichuk explains that research is currently underway to transfer human genes into pig organs, and this will help produce proteins the recipient's immune system will recognize. Although xenotransplantation could help temporarily increase the availability of organs, it could also cause problems. According to surgeon John Fung, current xenotransplantation efforts have fallen due to hyperacute rejection. Animals could be genetically modified to prevent the passing of infectious agents, but biotechnology has not caught up with this idea yet. Near-perfect genetic modifications have not yet been reached, even with animals most similar to humans.
Keeping the previous limitations and the temporary solutions in mind, our group came to the conclusion that a government-run market system for the procurement of organs would be the best option to cut down on the current length of the waiting list. According to the combined studies of Pettichuk and Danny Frederick, a scholar at the Mises Institute, a market would bring supply and demand closer to equilibrium. And this would create a higher percentage of patients receiving functioning organs at a shorter period of time.
Additionally, a market system could create financial relief for those who decide to sell their organs. The donors could be compensated with, as predicted by Alexander Berger, an analyst for GiveWell, around $50,000 for one kidney. This could cover college tuition, a new car, or a down payment on a house.
As proposed by David Jeffries, a biotechnology lawyer, the regulation could add a middleman to the current process. This would help regulate the prices of organs as well as keep the market system fair. Regulations would also be implemented to eliminate the existence of the black market. According to James Taylor, a fair system would eliminate ethical concerns for global donor coercion. With more people volunteering to sell their organs legally, there would be no need to do so illegally.
With the implications of the chosen solution, there would be potential barriers. According to Anya Adair and Stephen Wigmore, surgeons at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, the market system would have the possibility of being exploitive of the lower-class American citizens. They say it would be targeted the poorest in society and would force them to give up their organs. The compensation of the organs could also diminish the notion of altruism as previously discussed. With many patients relying on the gift of donation, being paid for an organ could be viewed as selfish. Despite these possible challenges, the government-run market should be implemented in the United States in order to increase the availability of organs and lower the transplant list. Thank you. That's all.
All right, ladies, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna ask each of you a question, and Etsub, we'll start with you first. So can you tell me what was the strongest counter argument to the solution or conclusion your team identified and why?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I'm asking you to tell me what was the strongest counter argument to your team solution that your team identified.
Jordan with the futuristic lens had a counter argument about cloning, and that opposed the ethical aspects of our resolution to legalize the sale of human organs. And so if cloning was implemented in the future, it'd be unethical to clone the DNA of humans in order to make duplicates. And we found that with a lot of the counter arguments that you provided, there were other ethical dilemmas as is present in other scientific inventions.
Okay, thanks. Savannah, could you describe how the content of the team presentation was changed as a result of your group's discussion?
As a result of our discussion, we had to move a few things around and we had to be more concise, so the content was changed as parts of my paper were left out and parts of Edsu's paper was left out, specifically with altruism, and with mine discussing more to the creation of jobs. Those didn't make the cut, so those things were changed in the overall discussion of the presentation. We also had to find a way to better summarize altogether, so some things were left out of all of our claims as far as the specific examples and some sources. I had to leave out an author by the name of Cousin that I wanted to use, and things like that happened all throughout their presentation.
Thank you. Juliet, could you give one specific way that your thinking changed as a result of learning about Etsub's findings?
Okay. So Etsub's claim was the ethical lens. And mentioned in our presentation, she talks about Frederick Ambeck-Stier, the coordinator of ELIP, whom she quoted, and was a source who further reinforced her argument that prohibiting a sale of human organs promotes black markets and increasing victimization rates. And with that, I felt that it further helped our presentation to move, to have that ethical side with Ambeck-Stier to make the team thesis more reinforced and have more than quantifiable data and more than just facts such as a scientific lens to make the thesis more.
Okay, thank you. Finally then, Jordan, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
So our team resolution of having a government-run organ market makes me think differently about my own research, because in the futuristic lens, which was my lens, I didn't necessarily get a chance to focus on fully research that predicted statistics for where the market would go in 30 years or more time. I'm mostly focused on direct implications and tangible implications of what the market would look like, such as the decrease in the waiting list for organs almost immediately. However, in our team solution, we were better able to come together to decide why a market system would economically, scientifically, and ethically benefit America in the future.
Okay, all right, thank you.